Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We've not got everybody yet, but as ever with these things, people will come online as and when. So I think we'll make a start, and a very warm welcome to the third Thinking Place webinar brought to you in association with the Local Government Association. So for those of you who don't know, my name's John Till. I'm the founding director of Thinking Place. And Thinking Place for the last 14 years has been working with places to help them reimagine what they're going to before by creating forward-looking place stories that bring the stakeholders, the community together behind a shared sense of direction for their place. And a lot of the principles in terms of what we're doing are very appropriate in terms of a coronavirus situation, which we are in obviously today. So first of all, many thanks for those of you who've joined. It's a fantastic attendance, considering how busy everyone is at this time. We're in holiday season, and you're also all having lunch. In fact, you may be having lunch as I speak, but there we go. So I guess the attendance means that we are bringing you insight, ideas, and advice that is helpful for you, which is what this is all about. A little plug for our webinar next week, which is in association with the Society of Local Authority Chief Execs, although you don't need to be a member to be part of that. I think next week will be a must hear in terms of what the content is. I'm in conversation with Martin Reeves, the Chief Exec of Coventry City Council and Gold Command for the West Midlands in terms of coronavirus. So the event is called Pandemic, People and Places, Shaping Our Places as we learn to live and work with coronavirus. I mean, Martin has been at the heart of managing the implications of the virus regionally. He's passionate about the role of place and local public service. So he's going to, I know, be giving some very forthright views on where places are going, what will be important for them, how all of this has been managed, how government has done, how it's impacting on people and communities, and also how it's impacting on him personally and professionally. So this is really unplugged and unleashed Martin. 11 o'clock next Tuesday. So I urge you to have a listen, and you can register via the Thinking Place website. Today, our focus is on how we start to recover and reset in terms of as we move from the immediate crisis into hopefully trying to rebuild communities and economies. I think recognizing that there aren't going to be any big shiny investments. We've got to make the most of what we have. We need to uncover and highlight our assets, our opportunities. We need to bring them together, whether they're people, whether they're businesses, landscapes, developments, whatever we've got, because we've really got to leverage what we have as places. And it really calls for authenticity about our places. And we've got to take our stakeholders on this journey. They've got to believe in it. They've got to see a direction of travel rooted in what makes their place special and in what it can achieve. It just isn't realistic if we bring false dawns of being digital hubs, green economy, etc. when we haven't got those assets. We need to really focus on what we have. We all desperately need collaborative action. I think every place has seen it in the crisis. We now need to see it in the recovery and the reset. And to have that needs confidence, it needs clarity, it needs coherence, and it needs really good, effective, meaningful communications. And that's why we've got to keep it real in what we say and in what we do. And that's what today is about. and we have as you have seen, a stellar lineup of speakers from different parts of the UK with very different opportunities, and we've had the pleasure of either working with them now or working with them previously. We're going to hear what they have to say first, and then we're going to move into a Q&A discussion. The important bit is for you guys out there is you can ask questions from now using the Q&A facility. So don't wait till the end. You can ask as many as you want. I will try desperately to get through as many as possible in the second half of the session. So your chat is disabled. We are recording this, just so you're aware, because it's important that we use it later in terms of best practice and help for other places. So I think enough from me in terms of setting the scene. Let's get started. First up, we have Susan Parsonage from Wokingham, a lovely, beautiful area west of London, brimming with potential, has a massively important relationship with the capital city. So as I said before, ask questions as we go along. I'll invite Susan to make her contribution. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John. So good afternoon, I'm Susan Parsonage, the Wokingham Borough Council Chief Executive. So Wokingham, it has a population of 160,000 people. It's got lovely towns and villages and rural areas and commercial parks, and sits in the middle of Berkshire and the Thames Valley. Today, we're talking about place, resetting and keeping it real. My view in terms of place shaping is a council is critical, whether that's through leadership, enabling, facilitating or catalysing that shaping, especially so in these uncertain times. And yes, this is an opportunity right now for leadership and resetting the agenda. Part of that place shaping role is telling the story of a place, having a strong narrative that is collectively owned. A story that people can recognise and identify with, and I think that it can become the anchor for advancement. I want to make 3 points in my 5 minutes or so. So the first point that I want to make is when we're thinking about narrative and defining the narrative, there is a need to see the nuances in different places and then understand how to address them. For example, I was the Chief Executive at Lancaster City Council up until March 2019. And when building the place narrative there was a defined area with the coastline, a lovely historic city, Lancaster, as well as knowledge sectors such as Lancaster University and much innovative arts and culture. Now, if I turn to Wokingham, where we're just starting our place narrative journey, the lines are more blurred, with Reading University having a 75% footprint in Wokingham Borough. In addition, in Wokingham, we have a range of global companies which are more readily linked to other areas. So we need to raise Wokingham's profile and to take a partnership journey to define a brand and narrative. And it's timely to do so in this post-COVID recovery period, to take that journey. I know from my experience in Lancaster, when defining the narrative, that it's the journey that really matters as well, because it's that journey with partners. It's as important as anything. And in that defining of the narrative, that the businesses and partners are really in the driving seat. And in this first point that I want to make, I want to say it's also critical to have a joint narrative across council administrative boundaries and on a sub-regional basis, one that residents and businesses can relate to. So as councils, we're not rubbing up against each other, we're better together. So LEP areas are really important to this. So my second point is that when defining narrative and branding, the importance of knowing your place, your locality and communities, and the opportunities. And that's the opportunities from COVID as well. At Wokingham, we're having focus groups and conversations right now and people are saying a range of things as part of really defining that narrative. So let me give you some examples. So in Wokingham, great quality of life, people want to live here, and there's still high housing demand. And over recent years, there's been really rapid housing growth, but this is impacting on what makes the area special. The council has invested heavily in town centres such as Wokingham, and people can see that. And there's now an opportunity to capitalise on the fact that currently people are doing more shopping locally and they're working from their homes. So do we have more opportunity there in terms of office space locally? But we need to be clear about our direction. In the area, we also have a lot of creative people and a large volume of charities and volunteering. Like many local authority areas, we've seen a real positive step change in our relationship with the voluntary and community sector during COVID. And it's so important that we don't lose that great step that we've made with our voluntary and community sector, so that we don't lose the value of that to the community, and that we don't lose the value of that when we define our narrative, when we have our brand. We want to make the most of the arts and culture. We want to make that central and vital to our places, making the most of physical assets that are already there. I think there's a lot more that we can do in that area. So in terms of this second point, this is about turning up the dial in different areas and being clear about where we are right now, being clear about the opportunities from COVID, being clear about where we're going, and actually making the most of those opportunities, and clarity on what makes our brand or place distinctive. And that's going to lead me really onto my final point. So my final point is quite short. So vision is central to the narrative and brand. Much has gone on in Wokingham, but it's gone on quietly below the radar. So ambition is vital, even in these times. Though, I think what's really important, we need to understand the granular. We need to understand what's happened as a result of COVID in setting that new ambition. In Wokingham, we needed a clearer collective identity and articulation. We need that. And I've just been talking to a group of businesses only a short time ago, a couple of hours ago today, just before this webinar, and they're absolutely clear that we've got to have that collective identity and articulation. We need to be bolder and stand out, really resetting the place for thriving communities and revitalising the local economy. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. That's brilliant. Thank you for that great start in terms of getting the point across about the importance of narrative and about all the stakeholders wanting to see that clarity of where the place can go. And now the magic of technology allows us to go from Wokingham to Gosport. So Gosport across the water from the city of Portsmouth, a fantastic heritage location, been so important in our military history along the way, but a place with some very interesting opportunities. And I'm really pleased that we've got Debbie Gore, who's going to outline what some of those are and how they relate to the recovery of that place. Debbie.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everybody. As John said, my name's Debbie Gore. My background is in development management, so in dealing with projects, planning applications and development sites. But over the last couple of years, my role has changed to take on the more strategic elements of planning, and even more recently appointed as assistant to the Chief Executive to represent our shared Chief Executive with Portsmouth, David Williams, on matters relating to Gosport. So I've been working in Gosport all my career, for 28 years. So I'm very familiar with the place, but also very conscious that I may have a fixed view of it. So when we first started talking to John, I was really keen to take a fresh view and welcome some external opinions on that. I'm also recovery and response lead for COVID for the council as well. So I've been heavily embroiled in dealing with our response. So Gosport is a small naval town located on the south coast on the western side of Portsmouth Harbour. We have a population around 70,000. We're very flat. and we're the largest town in the country without a railway station. So that's always a good pub quiz question and answer when that comes up. We have a number of fortifications, military sites that were linked to serving the Royal Navy and the Naval Base in Portsmouth. So we have armament and victualling depots, which supplied goods to the ships, and also obviously the armaments for them going off to war. So over a period of time, those depots and areas have closed or are in the process of being released by the MOD. And this has posed a number of challenges for us in addition to our geography. We're on a peninsula. We've essentially got one road in and out. As we're on the waterfront, we have a number of nature conservation designations, which always make our development sites really tricky to deal with. And there's this ongoing sort of uncertainty with regards to our MOD sites, waiting for the decisions to be made on timing of release. So it's very difficult to plan ahead. As a result, our skill base has changed quite significantly, particularly over the last 30, 40 years. And we have a significant issue with outcommuting, with over 20,000 people going out of the borough each morning on the one road and then back in again. We have pockets of deprivation as a result, and a real challenge in terms of perception of the area. People here feel like they're the poor relative to Portsmouth and really get sort of disgruntled as nothing ever changes. So part of my challenge with my new role is really to take a fresh look at that. We're in the process of reviewing our local plan and our economic development strategy. And so there are a number of opportunities to really align everything and pull everything together moving forwards. As a result of the pressure from the MP, the Solent put together an infrastructure investment plan for Gosport, which really captured all of these issues and challenges in one place. And that gave us a good evidence base to start from and a place of reference. Then we started our discussions with John around what is special about Gosport. He helped us by engaging with a wide range of stakeholders, businesses, community groups, local resident associations, and really got a good feel from them as to how they felt about things. And to be honest, there wasn't any real shocks about that, but some of the imagery that they helped us put together, I didn't even recognise the place, and it really gave me encouragement to think that you can take a fresh view about a place. Some of the shops down the high street I didn't recognise, and it really did feel that we have got an opportunity to use some of the things that have been perceived very much as challenges and disadvantages, and really turn that around. So, as I said, what's special about Gosport? Obviously, we've got the brilliant waterfront location, we've got several beaches, got a number of heritage assets, and a marine community that has really built up recently around the harbour. But with the MOD sites brings significant challenges because a number of the buildings and scheduled ancient monuments are in a poor state of repair. I've mentioned the infrastructure issues that we've had, and we have had some success with liaising with the County Council to improve our road access links into Gosport. So some of the big infrastructure issues we've been able through collaboration to try and address those. But it's really getting down now into the granular level with some of the development sites as to how do we approach these and what do we really want to focus on. Through the story board, everyone felt really positive about our heritage assets. They're a great place to visit, but at the moment nobody can get in. They're in a poor state, so they're not safe to be in. And through our discussions with Historic England, we've been identified as a heritage action zone. And this allows a certain amount of resource in terms of a full-time post and project manager, but also access to their expertise and grant funding to start looking at the viability of some of these buildings and sites to see is there a real chance of bringing them back into use. And it might be a case that some of them yes and others no, but at least we'll be doing that work on the local level to really be able to start answering those questions. And that the focus has very much been on whether they can be brought into use for marine employment. And so we've been engaging with the local education establishments to see if there's a way that we can focus skills training around this to really start painting a picture of the future of Gosport in a really positive and modern way. And it's about engaging with all of our stakeholders and everybody taking ownership of the issue. And through our various boards dealing with the Thinking Places and also our Heritage Action Zone, we've got representatives from the MOD, the County Council, the education establishments, politicians, local businesses, resident groups, community groups and cultural trusts to really get a joined up joint effort to take things forward. And it's about giving people the confidence to say positive things about the place when they're talking to other people, and spreading the good word. We've also recently been allocated as a Heritage Action Zone for our High Street. So there are a number of heritage assets in the High Street, and we've suffered in similar to other places in terms of businesses leaving, but not as bad as some others, because we only have the small independent retailers in Gosport, not the large chains. And our High Street is also very close to our waterfront. So again, we're trying to focus on a particular area of the borough, engaging with the businesses and exploring ideas for alternative uses and whether we can zone certain areas and almost turn the High Street round to face the waterfront, and make it a destination for people to come and enjoy. In terms of the impact from COVID, this was all in place and ongoing before the pandemic struck, and very much we're put things on hold, still having meetings virtually, but picking up where we left off now to get these initiatives really up and running and seeking funding to help with certain things, and re-engage people that are really positive about taking the place forward. And in terms of responding to COVID, particularly around the High Street, we're having a review of our priorities, thinking that we were going to initially start looking at the fabric of some of our heritage assets, but actually with some of the struggles that the businesses have been experiencing, whether we start to put more in place for them first of all. So there are lots of things as a sort of case study that we're working on positively, and I can't stress enough the importance of our collaborative working with all our stakeholders and the positive effects that's had. Susan touched on the relationship with voluntary groups, and through our COVID response, that's actually improved and we've got stronger, built those links and relationships. And I think it doesn't just come down to money and availability. It really does come down to building and establishing and maintaining relationships, and being confident and positive. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. I mean, I think the thing with Gosport is, again, lots of opportunities, lots of funding streams, and the importance of having that shared overarching view of where the place is going, so that it isn't about funding pots, it is all about the place. And now we're moving to Medway, which is a fantastic collection of different towns, a place, I must admit, till we work with, I'd never been to, but a place that combines history, heritage, modernity. It's played a massive role in the history of the UK. So who better to talk about that story than Celia Glynn-Williams from the council there.
Well, thanks, John. I think you've just sold Medway for us, so that's very kind. So I'm Celia Glynn-Williams. I'm head of communications at Medway Council, and I'm the person who sort of led on our sort of place branding and marketing project since we initiated it just a couple of years ago. Really, we are fairly new on our journey, and actually I want to talk a little bit about the journey, but question really, has COVID thrown us off course? And I'd say absolutely not, and if anything, it's actually enabled and supported us in helping us, I think, provide an excellent local response, and is kind of, I think, gearing us up for, you know, for how we kind of take that forward for a stronger future for Medway. As John said, a lot of people don't really know where Medway is, and that's one of the reasons why we actually went about this part of the work. So for those of you who don't know, we're kind of located in the southeast of London, in the northeast corner of the beautiful county of Kent, but we are sort of a unitary authority and have been since 1998, and we have about 280,000 residents. We are kind of made up of better known towns, including places like historic Rochester, where Charles Dickens lived for many years, Chatham with its rich military heritage and sort of heritage for shipbuilding, and then other towns including Gillingham, Strood and Rainham, but also it's a rich rural area too, with the beautiful Hoo Peninsula, and running through it, of course, we have the stunning River Medway as well. So you know, following the economic devastation that was left by the closure in 1984 of the Chatham dockyard, actually we've been on a fairly major journey, really based around sort of economic regeneration, and actually we've done extremely well. I mean, in 2018, our economy stood at 5.6 billion, which is about seen an 18% growth over 4 years. We have big ambitions. We're the largest regeneration zone in the Thames Gateway. We have a plan to build 28,000 new homes, 4 universities, 14,000 businesses, 35 minutes from London. So, and some fantastic heritage assets, as John said. So, you know, increasingly, we feel that we've got a lot that we want to talk about, and a sort of very clear vision. And boosting our economy is a fundamental part of that vision, to sort of stimulate a virtuous circle of growth that sees rising skills, wage levels for local people, and also businesses moving into Medway as well in a sort of for planned growth, but in a sustainable way. But as we've heard earlier also from Debbie, is that, you know, what needs to go with this is an authentic story that draws in and builds the assets of an area that we're championing, and connects them with the audiences that we're trying to link with, I suppose. So another thing we wanted to do was to sort of create a greater sense of community within Medway. People just didn't know where Medway was. They know the towns, they know perhaps the Hoo Peninsula, but they don't know where Medway itself is. So it's still had a very sort of fragmented feel. So we wanted to give people, you know, also more confidence. It had also been associated as part of the economic deprivation with, you know, quite a lot of sort of rough and tumble. There was a bit of crime there. And Medway, the people of Medway have carried a bit of a chip on their shoulders as well over many years, in a sort of what is a fairly affluent county. So we're very keen to try and build the Medway's confidence as well. So we did a great piece of work with John and the team to build that up, on focusing on 3 key themes that came out of it that we will use to sort of build our place brand. One is about the sort of fabulous heritage assets, the 2 castles, the Chatham Dockyard, which is now one of the most popular visitor destination in the southeast, the Britain's second oldest cathedral. The second area is about sort of cultivating innovation and creativity. Again, a little bit like Wokingham, we have a lot of young and very innovative and creative businesses in Medway, and a lot of young people with 4 universities studying here as well. And also running through all of this is the fact that we have this amazing waterfront, which is sort of the home for much of the regeneration that's taking place as well. So we kind of defined that, and then we sort of set up a place board, and we've also set up a group of Medway champions who've come together from businesses and from community groups. We've really sort of helped champion Medway and to really kind of spread the word as well. And we were starting to make extremely good progress as COVID hit. And the community as a whole was growing in confidence. And I think one of the most important statement of confidence for Medway was when we announced last year that we were going to be bidding for the coveted UK City of Culture 2025 status. So along came COVID, and just really want to explore how it impacted us. Actually, the building blocks that we've been putting in place over recent years, with the place board, the champions, really, I think, you know, resulted in a fantastic joint response to the pandemic. The communities came together in a magnificent way, whether it was businesses, community groups as well. And together, for example, we pulled together a community support package, providing food and support in different ways, whether it's shopping or medicines, to those who are most in need. And we delivered the equivalent of about 111,000 meals to people across Medway during that time, using people like local housing associations and delivery companies. Norse, for example. That's just an example of some of the ways that we work together. The cultural and creative communities, again, all came together to provide cultural activities for people at home as well. The Medway community, again, that was fantastic in terms of the way they supported each other, you know, just as communities up and down the country have done. But in a way that I've never really seen in Medway in the sort of 3 or 4 years that I've been working there as well. So we've kind of, that's worked incredibly well together, and I'm very proud of everything that we've done. And there's been a lot of good strong and effective communication, and we've also strengthened our relationships across our other partners as well. We've also used our time wisely in COVID, and we haven't let key projects slip. So we've just signed on the HIF bid that will bring £170 million of infrastructure to the Hoo Peninsula in Medway over the coming years, and unlock important development there. And we've also taken opportunities that present themselves. So we just secured £2 million for an important adult education centre in one of our towns, and hundreds of thousands of pounds for active travel. So we've still shown, I think, that with our shared aspirations and our ambitions for Medway, we can continue to build the future even in the throes of the pandemic. In terms of just looking forward, the next steps for us are to focus on these assets again we've identified to forge ahead for Medway. We have a strong recovery plan working in partnership with others, with KCC, with the LEP as well, and a number of sort of joint cells regionally. Importantly, we're still on track to build for City of Culture 2025, and actually we see that as a major beacon for recovery for Medway. Bidding is next year, but again, building on our theme of culture, we're kicking off with an electric Medway, a digital arts festival that's taking place next month. We've just announced the first gaming festival, gaming and creative festival to take place. We think the first one in the country post-COVID, taking place in Medway. And we have another major festival we're going to be announcing in February, along with other areas as well. So we will keep going with the community, bringing that together. I think they've started well. We've created a video to say thank you to Medway as well. We've done videos of case studies about how people have helped each other, and I think that newfound confidence, and then bringing it together to bid for the City of Culture, will help us continue to bring Medway together as well. We're embarking on a mission to make Medway a child-friendly city as well, putting young people at the heart of everything we do and giving them the best start in life. And we also have a climate change agenda. As John said, we're not bidding to be the greenest city or anything, but actually we want to use our climate change agenda to unify people around common goals to give Medway a more sustainable future. So together with the Regeneration campaign continuing, we also think that we're ideally positioned to take advantage, for example, of people wanting to move out of London. So we'll look at running a campaign with house builders to promote the excellent housing opportunities that we have, the countryside and nearby as well. So again, it's just John said, focusing on the key assets that we have from the narrative and heritage. So, the future's a bit uncertain. We don't know where, in terms of a new wave, but I think the main thing is that, the people have come together. We've worked incredibly well. Our ambitious regen and people and community and City of Culture agenda remains the same, and actually we think it's actually COVID is kind of helping us in terms of that, helping us come together to take the next steps.
Okay, thank you, Celia. I mean, really great place. Very, very interesting. It's interesting how it now has the confidence to go for City of Culture. We've been very, very proud along the way that we've worked with all three UK cities of culture, and it was also interesting how the festivals and events that are planned are all about highlighting the assets of the place, which I guess is what it's all about. So finally, north to Harrogate, popular destination, known by many, home to the renowned Harrogate water, but a place full of many surprises, and I'm sure we'll get some of that from Kathryn Daly. Kathryn.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kathryn Daly, and my role at the council here is Head of Place Shaping and Economic Growth, covering planning, economic development, and asset management. And I'm really pleased to join the session today and share some experiences from a Harrogate perspective. And I really want to do this by talking about two key dates. And the first one of those dates is only 5 months ago, feels like a lifetime ago, Monday the 2nd of March. And this was the date that we launched the Harrogate Story, our new place brand for Harrogate. And it was the culmination of many months of hard work, facilitated by the council, but developed with the views and input of hundreds of key businesses, stakeholders and residents across the district. And we were very lucky to have a strong starting point for our story, because Harrogate is somewhere that seems to have resonance. Most people have heard of it, many have visited for a conference or for leisure. And if I asked you all now to shout out one thing about Harrogate, you'd probably say Betty's Tea Rooms or Spa Town. You might mention our Harrogate Convention Centre, which is currently a Nightingale hospital. You might say it's a nice place to visit or that it's posh. So there's already a positive perception quite far and wide really, that Harrogate is a nice place, it's lovely, it's beautiful, and it is. And even at Harrogate Town football games, the worst insult that we tend to hear from visiting fans is them singing, "You're just a town full of tea shops." Well, we do have tea shops and we are quite posh, but that doesn't mean that we don't have our own economic challenges, not least housing affordability, high levels of commuting both out and into the district every day, low workplace earnings, and a historic shortage of employment land. So we've been working really hard over the last few years to develop an ambitious local plan, which was recently adopted, and also to develop a targeted economic growth strategy to proactively address these issues and to shape our district and deliver sustainable economic growth for the future. And we recognised that a big part of this needed to be about communicating the fact that there is so much more to Harrogate than just being a nice place to visit, hence our place branding work. So we brought together a small but influential steering group of key business leaders, and with the help of John and the team at Thinking Place, we spent time talking to local people, local businesses, and finding out why Harrogate was special to them. And of course, Harrogate Town is the key economic driver here, but Harrogate actually covers 500 square miles of beautiful and diverse countryside, and towns including Knaresborough with its lovely riverside and castle, the stunning cathedral city of Ripon, 3 smaller market towns, all vibrant, Massam, Boroughbridge and Pateley. And we have culture and heritage in bucket loads, to be honest, and a fantastic built and natural environment. We've got over 2,000 listed buildings, 53 conservation areas. We have the Nidderdale area of outstanding natural beauty, a World Heritage Site at Fountains Abbey up near Ripon, the Yorkshire Dales, the 200-acre Harrogate Stray that belongs to the Queen. Our asset list just goes on and on really, but Harrogate is also a fantastic independent commercial spirit, and we're home to 13,000 businesses. And these range from large global players to small independents. We have some fantastic food producers and artisans which sit comfortably alongside international brands like Harrogate Spring Water and Yorkshire Tea. We have some of the best schools in the country, and Leeds and York are right on our doorstep, and they offer a graduate workforce and larger urban centres for people who want them. And we really see those places as a key part of our place offer, not a competition to Harrogate. So on the 2nd of March, we were feeling quite happy. We had a brilliant story to tell. We had a really good launch event, but you won't be surprised to hear that the next date I want to talk about, just 3 weeks later, Monday the 23rd of March, the date we'll probably never forget, any of us, full national lockdown, and obviously a game changer for all of us. But despite the challenges that brought, I think we quickly realised that the place work we'd been doing had actually put us in really good stead to deal with the challenges ahead. And our newly formed place leadership board has proved critical to helping us navigate the early weeks of lockdown. And private sector business leaders have worked alongside the public sector in a much needed place leadership role, which has been critical. And it wasn't the role we'd envisaged for that group, but the membership quickly flexed and it grew to match what was needed in that initial response phase. And we saw an amazing mobilisation of businesses stepping up and diversifying to support the local community. And if anything, I think lockdown brought an acceleration of people valuing place and appreciating local and wanting to work together, which is great. And we're really lucky that we have an incredible chair of our place board and some brilliant, motivated and passionate business leaders. And with their help, we've managed to continue the rollout of the place brand, not in the face-to-face way that we'd originally hoped, but by embracing technology and doing things virtually. And we've used the board to help shape our economic recovery plan as well, which prioritises our response for the district and rightly includes a very strong focus on place. And we're confident that our place story still holds strong in a recovery context. So we're using the place brand to encourage people to think Harrogate in its broadest sense, the district, not just the town. And in the short term, that's about encouraging our residents to think local, visit local, spend local. And we're using the visual language from our place brand to support a widespread PR campaign around shop local, shop safe, by way of example. But as things open up more over time, we'll also be using the Think Harrogate approach to broaden out our place brand for a wider external communication message to promote Harrogate as a location of choice, so to attract new investment, businesses, conferences, workers and visitors. And we want to use our new brand to build on our reputation and seek to recover in a sustainable way while staying true to what's made Harrogate special. And we offer things like fresh air and open space, health and well-being, a fantastic quality of life and work-life balance. And those are all going to be really important factors in a post-COVID world. And I suppose just to conclude, the work to develop the Harrogate story has definitely made us more confident in our offer as a place, and it's given us clarity about who we are and what we want. It's made us focus on our assets, our wider assets, and show us the importance of communicating those both clearly and consistently. But most importantly, it's helped us build really strong local relationships with businesses and other organisations, and it's given us a strong framework to work collaboratively across our place moving forward. And I think this feels even more important now than it ever did. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kathryn. Yeah, really interesting. A place absolutely brimful of assets, but some of the elements, of course, that the place is trying to promote, very, very different. So things like knowledge economy and businesses were not the heart of what everybody necessarily thought about with Harrogate. But yeah, they're making great strides. We're going to move on now to the discussion. I've got lots of questions. Keep asking questions. I will ask as many as I possibly can. So let's start with this. So first one, I think I'm going to address to Susan. And do you think that in developing the place story, which you're in process of doing, is going to help you be bolder and take more risks locally than perhaps you would have done before in the environment we're in?
Sorry, I'm just unmuting myself there. I absolutely, what is going to be crucial is this discussion and dialogue. I think that, and some of the speakers have said this, is that through having the dialogue and discussion as part of the story, you develop great relationships. And for me, great outcomes come from great relationships and trust. So working on the story is absolutely will lead to great, and it leads to innovation and that ability to think about sort of risk taking. So yeah, I'm very confident that the stronger the relationships we have through developing the narrative makes us more resilient and then enables us to take those greater risks as well.
Okay, great. One for you, Debbie. So Gosport, not only a place full of heritage, this questioner says, but obviously very strong and thriving voluntary sector. How do you capitalise on that as we move out of the crisis bit to use it in terms of building the place, yes, economically, but as a supportive and a caring place? And I mean, Susan mentioned the charity sector that there is there. So I think it's a very interesting aspect that often is neglected in some of these discussions.
No, thank you, John, and absolutely agree. And it's been a really positive experience through how people have come together through the voluntary sectors with the council and everyone all stepping up together and wanting to help. And in terms of building on that, obviously we have our various boards, and we have representation from Gosport Voluntary Association, who are an overarching umbrella organisation that help to coordinate with the voluntary sector. And it's really important, particularly with the COVID incident, to understand how people's perceptions, needs and priority has changed. And I think through the relationships that we've established, we will continue to build on those and make sure that we really understand what our communities need going forwards. It's all very well sort of making assumptions based on facts and figures, but I think through the relationships that we've now got with the people, the dialogue will be much more free and open and honest. And I think that's such an important and encouraging thing to take us forward.
Okay, that's great. One for you, Kathryn. A comment here about recognising the need to be real and that we can't all be digital hubs and green economies. However, a comment that most LEPs are focusing on these and it'll be central to their funding priorities. So how do you manage to stay real, focus on what you've got without losing out on financial benefits through the LEP, etc.?
Good question. Thanks, John. I think it's quite relevant to Harrogate, this one, because I think traditionally we've been seen as a place that is quite well off and isn't deprived and doesn't necessarily need funding. So we've had to work really hard on our narrative with the LEPs to ensure that we're best placed to access funding when we need it. And I think it all goes back to that clear narrative and that story, because it's about being very clear about your priorities locally, how those fit into the bigger picture at a LEP level, and not the scattergun approach that just tries to access any bits of funding you can whenever you can, but a very targeted and thought through and evidence-based story that will resonate with funders and investors. And I think for us, that was one of the key outcomes that we wanted out of our place work. You know, part of it was about marketing the place for visitors and for events, but there was a very real financial strategy behind it as well, which was about making our bids and our narrative to funders and investors very, very clear and focused. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I think there is, I mean, the LEPs, I think, will have to take a slightly different approach, because, I mean, we look at a lot of economic strategies, and to be quite honest, you could go across lots of the LEPs, you could take the name of the place off and you don't know where you are. So I think there does have to be much more of a reality check on what is sensible and aspirational in terms of what economic strategy is all about. Celia, how easy or difficult was it to get business involved with place shaping, and how do you think that relationship might or might not change in the light of COVID?
Thanks, John. It's actually a really good question, actually, because I have to say that one of the areas that we've historically struggled with was having that sort of a close two-way relationship with the businesses. As I said, you know, we've got 14,000 businesses in Medway, and it was a lot of them are sort of very small businesses, one-man bands. And again, we've had some of the, you know, we've got some very big businesses like British, you know, BAE Systems, for example, as well. But one of the things that we did was we sort of emailed a lot of them. We sort of communicated out. We worked with employer organisations. There's a very active Chamber of Commerce in Kent as well. So when John and the team came in, actually we spent quite a lot of time. They did a big piece of sort of immersion work with them, to actually talk to them. So actually, and sort of find out. And actually, we found there's a sort of great willingness from them to actually get involved and help us on this one. And from the first piece of research that John did through to then, we then moved it from having done the sort of the place branding that we did. We then sort of had a launch in about 6 months later, and then moving straight into sort of setting up a champion scheme that we invited businesses and other organisations to come along and join. Actually, we've kind of harnessed the enthusiasm of a great many of them. And interestingly, COVID-19 in particular now has also brought them closer to us. Obviously, we've got much closer relationships because a lot of businesses were applying to us for grant funding throughout COVID as well. So again, that relationship has been further established, and we just want to build on that further in the future. And hopefully, it'll sort of enable us to do more things, and with them as as the years go past now.
Okay, cool. Debbie, one for you. What a question that we're often asked in trying to build the story and the identity. What did you find were the best ways of getting engagement with the unusual suspects as opposed to the usual ones? Because it's always important to hear from some of those.
I think through sitting down with yourselves and sort of looking at the various communities and areas, I think identifying those people and by approaching them positively and really getting them to understand that this could make a difference. And I mean, with a planning background, we often get a situation where it's certain groups of people that always speak, and it is really important to make sure you capture everybody that will be affected and encourage them to feel comfortable about putting their views forward, because they're not always used to doing that. So I think a very personal approach. I think a lot of the direct telephone calls and then group sessions, it was held in a very positive and inclusive way, and I think that's really important about trying to engage with people, and also engaging through a range of media as well, not just being fixed on a certain way, because some people feel more comfortable with other means. Okay.
Kathryn, I'm picking up a little bit, I think, on you mentioned about the place leadership group. A question here wanting to know really about how you've used the stakeholders in a very practical way to help deliver the recover and reset strategy. Like, how's that working? Have you got any examples of what's happened differently because of doing that?
Thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, where we started with this is involving the place board at an early stage when we were pulling our economic recovery work together, because what we wanted to do was make sure that it reflected what was happening out there in the business community. And I suppose that's one of the big benefits we felt, is that we could use those leaders and their networks to actually get a lot of evidence that we wouldn't necessarily have had access to previously, and also use them as an important communication mechanism. So businesses who wouldn't necessarily engage with the council or listen to a letter or an email from the council, but are part of a business network locally with a big company or a business leader. And I think that's the biggest difference we've had, is that we've been using other people to deliver the place message. It's not just the public sector standing up and saying you should do this, you should do that. And in a strange way, we've almost been a bit of a silent partner at times, and I think that has helped. Sometimes it's appropriate for the public sector to lead the project or the discussion, but other times the story or the message can be much more authentic when it comes from another business or another peer. So I think that's probably the main thing that I would suggest. I think it's about using it for communication. Okay.
One here about post-COVID, a lot of talk about businesses for looking for different sort of space in different locations, and that's a big thing that's sort of wandering around social media. I guess the question is that, have you got any examples of that actually happening, of businesses changing the view about where they want to be, what they need, etc.? Anyone can dive in on that one.
John, with our High Street we're looking at the vacant space in the High Street and seeing if it could be adapted. We're looking at potentially an indoor market, incubator units, support office work, and we'll be trying to engage with local businesses across Gosport and outside as well, just to get a feel from whether they're interested in that. We've done a bit of work in terms of understanding what's there, who owns various buildings, because a lot of the challenge with high street buildings is lots of different ownerships and even just trying to work that out initially. So we put some resource and effort into doing that. So absolutely, I think we need to understand the space that's available and match it up with what people need.
And is anyone seeing any demand as well for this?
I think it's still early days, John. I think we're starting to hear feedback from businesses that their teams are wanting to work differently. That I think people have had the experience of working from home, and it's about that balance. I think for a lot of people, and that's what we're hearing, that people are unlikely to want to return to work in the office 5 days a week, but equally they don't want to work at home 5 days a week. And so it's about getting the right sort of spaces. It might be about some downsizing of core offices, but then it's about the type of space that Debbie was just talking about, that more informal business meeting spaces, the coffee shops, the incubator hubs, things like that, that I think people want to use in a much more flexible way. So yeah, I think it's still early to say, but certainly that's the types of messages that we're starting to hear.
And if I could just add, John, I think the one good thing I think we've seen across Medway, and I imagine elsewhere, has been the sort of shot in the arm, if you like, that COVID has actually given to cross-working, to partnership working in all sorts of areas, means that actually, we have greater opportunities to work together. So we have sort of recovery cells, if you like, in Kent, working with KCC and the LEP, and also with local businesses. So that's a good opportunity for us to sort of find that out. And also through working with groups through our, the Medway champions, we can sort of really start to explore, head on with people directly, rather than sort of maybe this sort of coming into us in a slightly fragmented way. So I think it's proved extremely useful as a way of sort of bringing people together.
Okay. Right. I'm just conscious of time, and goodness me, our hour has gone. And it's gone that quickly, I think, because of the level of conversation, etc., and questions. I've still got questions arriving in front of me, but unfortunately, there isn't time to ask them. So I want to thank Susan, Debbie, Celia, Kathryn, who've given us all plenty to think about, I think, to thank our co-hosts, the LGA, for me to thank my team, because at the end of the day, I just sit here, they do all the hard work. Most of all, to thank you, the audience. The recording will be shortly available on the website. A plug again for the session next Tuesday. So Unplugged and Unleashed, Martin Reeves on pandemic, places and people, not to be missed. Again, you can register on the website. Any aspects that you'd like to follow up on, particularly or individually, please send us an email. And it just remains for me to say thanks again and have a great rest of day.